Tate Chronicles now transmitting.
Welcome to the Tate Chronicles on Healthcare Now Radio. And now, here's your host, Jim Tate.
Good day, citizens of the free world. From border to border, coast to coast, and all the ships at sea, I bring you a warm welcome. This is your correspondent, Jim Tate, and thank you for tuning into the Tate Chronicles. Join me as we cut through the fog that exists at the leading edge of healthcare technology. My guest today is none other than Theresa Bell, co-founder, president, and chief technology officer of Kno2. Since its founding, Kno2 has been focused on one primary mission, the exchange of healthcare information. Theresa, welcome to the Tate Chronicles.
Thank you, Jim. I'm super excited to be here.
Well, today's topic is interoperability in general and specifically TEFCA. I know that very recently, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, Kno2 was one of 6 entities whose TEFCA, Qualified Health Information Network applications, received approval. And therefore, you're in a select group allowed to proceed with what's known as Phase 3, pre-production testing. And a hopeful conclusion outcome is to be named a Qualified Health Information Network. And of course, hopefully we all know by now, this is a network that would interact with others to create a network of networks for health information exchange. So let me ask you first, what do you see, it's a big question, the potential of TEFCA? Will the success depend on widespread adoption?
Well, let me answer those as kind of 2 separate questions, Jim. The potential of TEFCA, I think, is really up to us, up to, when I say us, meaning kind of the general, first of all, HIT community, and then, of course, those that they serve, the provider community. But absolutely, I think it has huge potential. And I actually put it in a kind of a LinkedIn post where it feels different this time, unlike other initiatives that we've seen either come through the healthcare industry or those that have been pushed by our government weekly, if you will, meaning in a less than ideal way. This one's different, and it's got a lot of push behind it. We felt that when we had the privilege of being on site in Washington, D.C. When you have folks from HHS, the second largest department, in the federal government, and then CMS and the veterans and CDC, just to name a few, that presented the leaders for these departments, it was obvious that this is an absolute precedent that's being set by the federal government that will bring along change. I think to your second question on widespread adoption, for me, it's a chicken or egg thing. The push by the federal government is absolutely critical to getting to widespread adoption. But for me, the biggest determining factor in widespread adoption has to do with the integration of a QHIN, for instance, by the edge technologies. So whether it's an EHR vendor, a digital health platform, whoever it may be that's integrating for QHIN services, the workflows, in my opinion, have been the biggest limitation to interoperability be kind of adopted at scale. And it's just not produced the value on the edge or to the provider because they haven't been implemented well. And I really hope, it's kind of a call out to all of the QHINs here, including ourselves, to be responsible to educating those edge technologies on the best way to implement and what workflows should look like. So we see adoption and there's demand for it. And if we generate that demand at the edge and with the provider community, it's a foregone conclusion, right? So the federal government being the first move, the QHINs taking their move and doing our work and bringing up the infrastructure. But that third move is really those edge technologies and really important ultimately to adoption.
So let's pretend like we've had widespread adoption. Is it really going to be as simple as a provider seeing a new patient, they click on a tab in their EHR, request is sent to QHIN through the TEFCA network, and they receive a response back literally in minutes? Can it be that simple? Is that the plan?
Yeah, I would, yes. And I don't actually love that scenario, Jim, not to be the contrarian here, but I hope they don't have to do anything. I hope it's delivered to them, at the time of scheduling. And then, of course, when they see that patient, is put enough intelligence in those edge systems, is exactly to the previous comment here, where I deliver not only what other information I could gather from other QHINs and their edge systems, but make it meaningful. Show me what I need to know in that moment. Don't make me go get it.
I hadn't thought about that. I love that, that it is not delivered on demand, but delivered almost, maybe a low-level artificial intelligence. This is going to be needed, and it's just retrieved without human interaction.
Jim, just to go along that point, and I think if interoperability has to be an action performed by the provider, we're asking for it not to be adopted. They have so much on their plate. Predict their needs. That's the call out to these edge systems, is predict what they need. And that's where it becomes so intrinsically valuable. That's the sticky factor for the edge system, is just give me what I need. Don't make me ask for it. Don't make me go out to it. And it will produce the outcome that we need in healthcare.
And the outcome in terms of what is delivered once that faucet is open. What's going to be coming out? Is it going to be these CCDA files? Is it going to be images? What will be coming out at a minimum TEFCA requirement?
Oh, it could be by the definition, if we stick to the letter of the law, if you will, yes. The law being TEFCA, it can be any file format. It's document driven, this first pass at it. So a document is subjective here. It could be an XML format for a CCDA. It could be a PDF, could be an image file. They're not controlling that mechanism, because it's really about getting the information in front of everybody and not using the fax machine, right? If we keep it to the core. But I anticipate largely, much like we've seen through Care Quality and Commonwealth eHealth Exchange, is that we'll see structured documentation being shared. And then it's really about what you do with it on the edge again to make it meaningful.
Now, I know one thing about TEFCA is it has to be backwardly compatible. So all the existing health information exchanges, and if there are any regional health information organizations still alive out there, it has to connect to those. But if some folks are able, I know there's an individual access requirement, so individuals themselves can access. How will that potentially affect the digital divide? I would imagine at a minimum, people are going to need a smartphone to run an app if I want to access the TEFCA network myself. And who's going to set up those?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I apologize, Jim. I didn't mean to speak over top of you there. Absolutely. I mean, individual access. It's been interesting to watch the movement, if we go back to the Cures Act and so forth, and the need for patient access, right? So we've got these patient kind of centered focused APIs that were part of the Cure certification, and the desire to get the information in the hands of the folks. But that really wasn't, even in the Cure certification, that's not at scale, right? So as an individual, especially an individual with one or more chronic conditions, what that means is that they'd have to go to every EHR where their information was at, to the provider's office, and get connected specifically to that. And who knows what delivery mechanism that would be. And so it could be one or many apps on my phone, or it's some sort of web portal I have to go to. Not really a desirable outcome. And especially if you get a sick patient or maybe an elderly patient, that's just kind of an untenable ask that we have of them. As we look at individual access requirements, especially coming through in TEFCA, the goal is to get it to scale, and the need for like an app or kind of a universal application that is patient facing or individual consumer facing, but probably better stated versus patient facing. I don't love that, is that it's consumer facing and it gives me the access to my information. And then again, it comes back to, should I have everything? If I have everything, what am I going to do with it? There's a lot to consider in there, but it's absolutely the right of the patient or the individual consumer to have their information. I know I feel that way individually, and what I can do with it for portability and to manage my own outcome. There's just a lot of detail underneath that yet to be sorted out. Critically important to the ultimate game here, to get patients in control and individuals in control of their information.
Theresa, one thing I'm always interested to ask folks is, how did you end up in healthcare interoperability? What led you to this field?
So I've been in healthcare. If I prefer not to say it on any kind of public forum, how long I've been in it.
Yeah,
it's been, let's say it's been more than 5 years, many more than 5 years. And I've been in it for a long time. Healthcare IT was actually my focus in part of my education, but also as I came out of that and moved into the space for managing workflow and business process automation. Now we're going back many, many years ago. So I've been focused to it. Specifically, what started me in Kno2 was the work effort I did in a consulting world, where I got to see firsthand, all the unstructured information that was floating around health systems and clinical offices and how it was being exchanged. and the inefficiency around that. And I just have always had a passion for it. So I decided to take it on. And I had the opportunity. They always say in what's the word, that necessity necessity is the mother of invention. I'm butchering it. Sorry. It happened around the 2008 timeframe, right? So as I was working with another organization, and I unfortunately had to go through 3 rounds of layoffs as the engineering leader, I didn't want to do that anymore. I said, I'm gonna do this on my own. I'm going to attempt to solve a problem, and I took the leap and haven't looked back since.
The widespread of provider acquisition of EHRs, maybe not hospitals, but ambulatory providers, the meaningful use incentive program was necessary. And that really stimulated the adoption of electronic health records. Is that going to be necessary for TEFCA? Is there going to have to be some type of incentive program?
Fortunately, I don't think so. I think there's many different market forces that are kind of converging all at once. Just the need, if we just take the economic forces alone and the staffing shortages, those are forcing the need for exchange and the need for exchange at scale. Because I think that's been the difference here that we're really talking about, is this exchange at scale capability. Providers shouldn't have to put so much effort into being able to just simply exchange information, and market forces are demanding it. So not only the economic forces we're facing to staffing shortages, the demand by the consumer, and then of course any work that the federal government does, especially as we bring CMS in, that all is a tailwind in the back of it. So I don't think we're going to have to see personally what we did with just the adoption of electronic health records. The market's demanding it, and that's the way it should be, because it creates healthy outcomes. I wouldn't, as much as meaningful use produced a good outcome, but $32 billion of investment there, in many ways, as it relates to interoperability, it became almost a bad thing as it relates to interoperability, because people would do just enough to get their paycheck and not do any more than that. Now market's saying you need to really change your business to survive and really to thrive. You need to change and get meaningfully connected to the rest of the healthcare ecosystem. So when it's driven that way, that produces really healthy outcomes.
I think we may see maybe not TEFCA requirements, but TEFCA advantages to the macro MIPS promoting interoperability criteria. I know it is for inpatients. Yeah. Maybe it'll be for outpatient providers also. Tell me who Kno2's customers are. What services do you provide?
So we've got we're a channel, what I always refer to as a channel company. So we largely work through electronic health record vendors and HIT vendors that provide technology out to their organizations. So those are pretty wide. We do have a concentration. When I started the company along with the other co-founder, we purposely went after the electronic health record vendors that were serving the overlooked markets. So post-acute, we're a dominant player in post-acute by far. Therapies, we roughly cover about 90% of PT, OT, ST in terms of therapy, behavioral, dental, vision, now doing a lot of work in that social space. And then I'd say the smaller specialty and primary care EHRs are a focus that we have right now to help them get connected in an affordable way. So we've got a soft spot in our hearts for those markets, and we dominate. And that soft spot has served us well. We're their loudest voice, and they're using us as their connectivity to the rest of the healthcare ecosystem. But I also will say that because of that work effort and the connectivity, where we serve now as the broadest network of networks and the deepest network of networks in healthcare, even without TEFCA, that has really opened up opportunity in many parts of the market that we are not even pursuing, but are coming to us. So digital health platforms, patient engagement platforms, doing a lot of work in population health, whether it's care gap closure or HEDIS measures, tons of activity coming to us. But we get unique opportunities every day that come in the front door with partners. When I mention partners like Xerox and Konica Minolta, people think of these big multifunction devices and would never think that they could be an interoperable device. Well, we make them interoperable. You can walk up to those devices today, and because they're integrated to our API, instead of scanning a document that ends up on somebody else's fax machine in paper, they scan a document and it ends up in the Epic system across the community in their inbox, right? So that's how you really create a connected ecosystem. And we're all about serving every type of HIT vendor and EHR vendor out there to really see us move this forward. And imagine putting QHIN behind all of that. Imagine
exactly. Sure.
Having QN connected devices. Nobody's ever thought of that, but we do. And that's what we think about all day long.
To our audience, if you're just joining this episode, I'm Jim Tate. And today on the Tate Chronicles, I'm speaking with Theresa, President and CTO of Kno2, and the topic is interoperability and TEFCA. So once a provider is hooked up and has access to the TEFCA network, what about the need to aggregate and clean up data? Is there going to be a need for some third parties or value-added services to strip out duplications and things like that? What are your thoughts on that?
I think there probably is. That's certainly not in Kno2's purview. We're not interested in becoming that because we think there's many good companies that do it fantastically today and just need access to the data. Mm-hmm. You'll often hear me say it as interoperability when it moves from being a noun to a verb. I know we're successful, and to me, this is a clear example of when it would move to a verb. Where we're moving the data, we're getting access to it, and the interpretation and the use of that data, whether it's deduplication or actually just pulling out certain data elements, really is up to the edge and the purpose that they have for their consumer. It came up in a phone call yesterday. Somebody said, hey, I don't want you touching the data because we have very specific intention for it. Please don't do anything. And I said, we don't, right? We make sure that you have access to all of it. And then as an edge system, let your AI technologies and your intelligence and your computer scientists and everything else do the magic with it based upon your need. And so I do believe there'll be groups that do cleanup of the data. It certainly won't be Kno2, but that's we think there's a tremendous opportunity to do that.
But somebody could take Kno2's feed and then put it through one of those services and clean it up any way they wanted to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Absolutely.
So you mentioned your partners connect through API process to you. Will you be offering TEFCA as a standalone service or combined with your current offerings? Or do you know?
Yeah, we do know. Well, at least as far as our predictive skills can take us, we don't anticipate, just like we've done with every other network, and it's absolutely proven true, that we would break it out from our current offering. Our offering is our communication API, which is send, receive, find. And our commitment to our partners, again, I spoke to our channel earlier here, is that every continued connectivity effort our development team takes will be normalized back into send, receive, find. So they have the benefit and the reassurance that if they integrate, for instance, to send clinical information, we'll broker the exchange for them to the recipient based upon the appropriate network. And we anticipate over time, and the QHIN will become kind of the dominant network for send, receive, find. But it's not going to be at the exclusion of any other need because we're comprehensive communication. That's how we approach the market. Send, receive, find gives you comprehensive communication, so you can cover entire use cases, including facts, by the way. And we don't exclude that. And they have to have that reassurance. So we don't see it being standalone. I don't see how we would ever get there, but it would be combined with our current API offering. And for those that don't use our API, we do have a communication portal that they can subscribe to as a provider.
Yeah, I love that phrase, send, receive, find. That really kind of takes it down to the root of everything, doesn't it? Just the basics. That's what we're looking at.
Just the basics. That's how information flows. You send it, you receive it, or you go get it. It's one of the three.
How can our listeners find out more about the services provided by Kno2?
I'd always encourage them to go to our website. Obviously, that's www.kno2.com. And there's multiple opportunities to engage with our team from there. Or feel free to reach out to info@kno2.com and a team member will be reaching out to you based upon their role in the company. But we're always here to help. We engage very personally with everybody that inquires of the company and look forward to that opportunity.
How'd you name the company Kno2?
Jim, that's for a different discussion, but it happened in Las Vegas. And I was going through some names and was saying, say no to facts, say no to facts.
Oh, sure.
So Kno2 came out of that, and I went out to Kno2.com and it was available with the domain that short. It was like, I jumped on it, and there's nothing more magical than that.
That's simple.
It has nothing to do with the periodic table. Let's just say that.
Exactly. TEFCA has been planned and funded for 6 years. Hopefully, by the end of this year, some data is going to start flowing. Well, where do you think possibly we could be in 3 to 5 years? Do you think it'd be robust?
I'm sorry.
No, robust.
I do. I think TEFCA will become I think it'll become the dominant form of exchange. I don't believe all exchange will happen under TEFCA, maybe ever, and certainly want to make sure that there's room for innovation. But I think it'll become the dominant form of exchange across the United States. I certainly hope so. And then allow innovation to occur with folks like us and with the edge systems on what we do with the data that's being exchanged. But I believe it's got a lot of tailwind and the support of, the various QHINs that have been selected and groups like Epic. That's critically important to have those big players to push the initiative forward. And we're excited for that. One
thing I've been thinking about recently, I'd love to hear your comments on it. Will there be some data desired that is really outside the TEFCA network? Like, I don't know, possibly gigantic radiographic DICOM files, or is everything going to be able to be accessed? Will there be any?
Hard to predict that. I don't anticipate that everything. I will personally say I certainly hope not, because I do believe that innovation gets stifled in that thought process.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe a good portion of it will, especially for treatment. I know that there's a desire to solve some of the other purposes of use for HIPAA, and hopefully we can do that. But I don't anticipate that all forms of exchange will run through the QHINs. There'll be some that sit outside of it. I don't know how it has to do with anything with file format or size versus the use case.
Sure.
But we'll see. We'll see where the future takes us.
We've got a couple of big conferences coming up this month. Vive is in Nashville, Tennessee, and then next month, HIMSS is in Chicago. Is Kno2 going to be represented at either one of those?
Yep, we'll certainly be at both. At Vive, we'll have attendees presence, and then at HIMSS, of course, we'll be in attendance and have presence at the HIMSS conference. Very active at both, participating, educating, speaking, and look forward to engaging with folks there and seeing some of our fellow participants and other QHINs there also.
And if they want to find out at your website, what's your URL?
It's www.kno2.com.
Well, I'll be at both Vive and HIMSS, and so I look forward to meeting you or members of your team. I know TEFCA is going to be probably the major topic at both conferences.
I agree, and look forward to it also, Jim. It'll be fun.
Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Tate Chronicles, and I offer a special salute to my guest today, Theresa Bell of Kno2. Theresa, thanks for coming aboard today.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Appreciate it.
You can find more information on this show's program page at healthcarenowradio.com. Until we meet again, here's wishing you smooth sailing and safe harbors.
Tate Chronicles transmission ending now.